Let's get the champagne popping. The Guardians are going to the 2024 Major League Baseball playoffs, and the magic number is down to 3 to winning the division. Let's go, Guardians. It's Andrew Hoty, and I'll give you my raw takes. Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty right here on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe, and if you enjoy the show, check me out on social media as well. Facebook, Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Twitter /X, Hoty Andrew. And on Instagram, Hoty Raw Takes. For all the raw takes you can handle, you got to check me out on social media. And I frequently update it with my personal thoughts on games, events, and anything going on in the sports world, along with a reel once in a while, especially for those Cleveland teams. All right, we got week 2 of the NFL coming up, so if you're a football fan, please stay on the line. We have a lot to talk about in terms of the Cleveland Guardians first. They just clinched a playoff berth, the first one since 2022, the first one in the post-Terry Francona era. Everyone should be thrilled. Stephen Vogt, you see the respect that those players have for that manager in the locker room yesterday when they're popping champagne. Unbelievable, the things they have said about him and what a terrific job he's done. For a first-time manager to take that team, who we all thought were not going to make the postseason this year because of the major flaws we saw last year, to the postseason. The offense has drastically improved. The bullpen has drastically improved, although we knew the bullpen was pretty good looking at last year too, with Emmanuel Clase leading the charge in saves. But he had a lot of blown saves last year. This year, his 3 blown saves still resulted in wins. So give Emmanuel Clase credit, give the bullpen credit. An unbelievable job for the Guardians bullpen this year, as we all well know. You take a look at some of the key guys this season. Obviously, Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, they're getting the job done at bat. Take a look at David Fry earlier this season. He had a lot of pop, maybe not as much of late, but David Fry, especially against left-handed pitching, has been getting the job done. Steven Kwan, I know he's been in a major slump since August, but he was hitting .390 at one point. That went a long way early this season. And then you look at the guys later in the season making an impact. Brian Rocchio, I think, is one of those guys. Early on this season, I think a lot of us were saying Brian Rocchio is the next Miles Straw. And Brian Rocchio's not the next Miles Straw. He's definitely far from it, and he's made a significant impact late this year, and I think we need to give him more credit for that. Andres Gimenez, later in the year especially, he always had that pop in him, but I think Andres Gimenez really finding some more power late this year has really helped the Guardians out. I think you have to give a lot of credit to guys like, at times too, the younger guys like Kyle Manzardo. I think Kyle Manzardo making an impact when he went back down to AAA because they weren't so sure, and then came back up, starting to hit 2 home runs and find some pop for himself. Kyle Manzardo deserves a lot of credit for this Guardians team getting to where they need to be. And also look at a lot of the starting rotation pitchers. Tanner Bybee, he's looked a little gassed as of late, but he deserves credit for being the most solid pitcher the Guardians have had from Game 1 and going all the way to when we reach Game 162. He's been the most solid guy for the Guardians. Matthew Boyd, once he came back from injury, absolutely tremendous. He did have a bad outing last time, but I think it's going to recover. Alex Cobb for his few starts, obviously, you can't give him too much credit because he only has such a small sample size, but I'm all for it. He's gotten the job done so far. Gavin Williams, for when he's gotten back, I think he's made some significant strides to where he can be a possible ace down the line, but Gavin Williams still has a lot of work to do after coming off a serious injury, but hey, I'm going to give him credit as well. And some of the other guys for really making some pretty good stints on the hill. Logan Allen, I don't think is really one of those guys that we saw pop out the way we did last year. He just did not pan the way I think all of us thought he would. So Logan Allen, not so much. Cookie Carrasco, the veteran, I still think he would be a great bullpen guy, but they did designate him for assignment. He had a rough year, but he still had some solid outings from time to time. And Ben Lively, too. Ben Lively's kind of been an Iron Man for this rotation. Now, he's had some really, really low moments at times, so I'm not going to give Ben Lively all the credit in the world, but I want to give him credit for being there when needed most. He got the significant wins for the Guardians and helped them get this team to where they are now. So Ben Lively, being that Iron Man-like figure, has really helped out. And he's pitching tonight against the St. Louis Cardinals, so hopefully he's able to hang in there. But that ERA is still under 4. The win-loss record close to 500, but I really don't look at that as much as I look at the ERA. Ben Lively has given us a very solid year from what we may have expected in the offseason from him. Great job from Ben Lively. So the Guardians are in the postseason. Who their opponent will be is obviously to be determined. They could be in the ALDS right away. Is it important for them to get the number 1 seed? I would say yes. That way you have home field advantage in case you face the New York Yankees, and the New York Yankees have the season series, so that would be a significant advantage for them to have home field. However, I think the Guardians also need to work on keeping pace with the Houston Astros, ensuring that they stay ahead of the game, ensuring they don't miraculously blow this division to the Kansas City Royals, because they have the season series against the Guardians as well. I really like the Guardians' chances in the postseason against a couple of teams. Baltimore, historically, they were really good against this year. I think they kind of have their number and can do it come postseason time. But obviously, the postseason's a completely different animal, so I'm not guaranteeing anything yet. But that is a possibility against Baltimore. I would obviously like them to play Minnesota, but Detroit has caught Minnesota since. Minnesota's struggles are definitely very intimate, and I think Rocco Baldelli is done. I'll be very honest with you, but we could talk about that another day when the offseason arrives. Rocco Baldelli, I think, will not be the manager of the Minnesota Twins because I think they are not going to make the postseason. If they do make the postseason, then I would say they have a shot, but the Detroit Tigers have caught them, and it's not even close. And the other thing, too, is what did they get Detroit or Houston? I think a Detroit series would be good because I think the Tigers can run out of gas by then. The Tigers have made kind of a really good late-season push to make the postseason, obviously, because they caught Minnesota. So I think the Detroit Tigers right now are in a position where they could run out of gas by the postseason. The Houston Astros, they're kind of showing some signs of running out of gas too, which makes me a little bit more excited to face them, but I'm not so sure about that. We know what the Houston Astros organization brings to the table, and are definitely an ALCS contender at the very least, possibly World Series contender, but they've made the ALCS every year for the last 6-7 years now, so you got to give the Houston Astros credit. They're a nerve-wracking team. I'm not sure I want to face them in the ALDS. If it's the Detroit Tigers, that would be nice, but still, I'm not so sure I buy into the Detroit Tigers. I buy into Skubal in a postseason series, but, I mean, the rotation has kind of come alive for them. They do have a Cy Young candidate in Skubal. It's going to be an interesting situation what happens with Detroit. And they've had a good year. But what will also be interesting if that ends up being a playoff series between Houston and Detroit is it the A.J. Hinch sign-stealing revenge series? I question that. But we'll see if that ends up being a postseason series. If the playoffs were, as I'm recording this video, that is a postseason series. But it'll be interesting to see what takes place there, especially because Minnesota's still in the mix. I'm not writing them off at all, but Detroit has caught them, and it caught them really, really fast. Minnesota has had some really low points of the season, and that's why I think Rocco Baldelli's job is in jeopardy with the Twins. With that being said, though, in regards to the Guardians, I would like their chances in a series against Baltimore. I would like their odds in a series against Minnesota. Detroit, most likely, yes, but Detroit we did struggle with a little bit this year. And I also would like their odds in Kansas City series. I think Kansas City has run out of gas as of late, and I don't think they even expected to be where they are right now. They have Bobby Witt Jr., they can rely on him. They have Salvador Perez, they can rely on him. From the hitting perspective, obviously Seth Lugo has had some ups and downs, more ups this year than downs. He looked like a Cy Young candidate earlier on this season. The Kansas City Royals rotation is pretty solid, but with that, having said that, I'm not so sure that the Kansas City Royals are going to find a way to have postseason success. So I think the matchup's going to be important for the Guardians. I think being able to find some steam in the postseason is also going to be important. Now, with that being said, they can't take their foot on the brake until they clinch that bye. Then I'd say the Guardians could put whatever foot on the brake is possible. Clinch a bye, and you're in good shape. Maybe catch the Yankees, but I think just catching a bye first is really important. But getting a home field series against the Yankees is important too. I don't want to rule that out. But I just say that because come postseason time, we see teams really run out of gas that may have been unexpected by the time they get to the postseason. Like Baltimore last year, I don't think anyone thought they were going to win the AL East. They ran out of gas come postseason time. I'm worried that could happen to the Guardians because the Guardians have had their foot on the pedal for so many times this season that if it comes to the postseason, that brake may come crashing down. And it may cost the Guardians in the postseason depending on the matchup. That makes me a little nervous because they've really steamed up at times. I want to see them come back down to earth a little bit late in the season, but after they clinch a bye, if that makes sense. Or at least the division. They're so ahead of Houston, I think, in the standings, I think it's likely they clinch a bye anyway. But with that being said, with so many games left, it's going to be important the Guardians kind of catch their breath a little bit, especially from the bullpen. Why I worry about the bullpen, even though I think late in innings are going to shut down whoever they play, is just because they've done that time and time again. Milwaukee's the same way in the National League. Their bullpen will just crush you. Crush you. And I think the Guardians have that advantage, but at the same time, that bullpen needs to be rested. So many times I could look at this season and say, the Guardians' bullpen has been the reason they stayed in the season. Because the starting pitching just wasn't that good. So it's going to be really important for the Guardians to figure that out. But having said that, my thoughts remain the same overall. The Guardians are in position right now to at least win the division, but I am not so sure they're going to have the postseason success because my concern is this team runs out of gas and the competition just gets too tough. So I am not picking the Guardians to win any kind of series yet. It'll depend on the matchup and where they rank in the standings before I even consider picking them to win a playoff series. I'm worried this team could run out of gas, and so far they haven't shown it in the length of an 162-game season, but what remains to be seen. Can they pick it up come the postseason time? Hopefully so. But so far they're doing great. They have a playoff spot. They're going for the division now. It's just about running out of gas. That's why I'm concerned about the Guardians in the postseason. But we'll discuss that at a later day once we know what the final standings are. Shohei Ohtani has entered the 50-50 club. Unbelievable performance from Shohei Ohtani, making Major League Baseball history in a 20-4 win over the Miami Marlins for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Shohei was just out of this world. 50 stolen bases, 50 home runs, and he may honestly go to 60 at this rate. Just looking at the games we have left. Now, I think it's unlikely, and who knows if that'll take place in the postseason as well. But man, Shohei Ohtani making some Major League Baseball history. Kudos to him. It's fun to watch that Dodger offense, and I am definitely concerned about any team the Dodgers come in contact with come the postseason. But I think an interesting series would be them and Milwaukee in the ALDS or maybe the ALCS, depending on how the final standings turn out. The Dodgers offense is one of the highest powered in the major leagues, but I think the Milwaukee Brewers bullpen can shut you down quickly. So that's a series I would look at possibly in the National League in the future and say, wow, that's taken place. Having said that, you look at the field of Major League Baseball teams so far. Milwaukee has clinched their division. There's nothing they could do about it. They're actually in really prime position to hit the brakes because they have the 3 seed no matter what, and I think it's going to take a lot for them to catch up to either the Dodgers or the Philadelphia Phillies. So they should just take a pause on the regular season and just sail on by. They're so far ahead of everybody in the NL Central. They've clinched the division. Everything's good for the Milwaukee Brewers. The New York Yankees are still fighting for a division title with the Baltimore Orioles, so they're a little bit more on the side of the Guardians where they should start to rest a little bit, but at the same time, you want to win the division, you want to get that first round bye, you gotta fight to get it. So the Yankees and the Guardians are kind of in the same boat there. I think the Houston Astros, until they clinch that spot, need to keep their foot on the pedal. But having said that, once they clinch, I don't think they're catching the Yankees or the Guardians in the standings, so they should just stay put at 3. But they need to catch that division title quicker than later. I think they can do it in 2 or 3 games, but I am not sure about that number. So that's something I do have to check. But the Houston Astros are kind of in that Milwaukee situation right now. They just haven't clinched it yet. Milwaukee was so far ahead because they play in such a poor division anyway. But that's the thing with teams like the Astros and the Milwaukee Brewers. When you play in a poor division, you're going to have such a significant advantage. And the Guardians, we have to add this too. The Guardians are currently leading in the AL Central. They haven't won it yet, but they're currently leading in the AL Central with 4 teams above 500. 4! And forget about the White Sox. We know they're terrible. I hope that does not become the excuse for this baseball team going into the postseason, is that they played in an easy division because the White Sox is there. No! It's not an excuse because Minnesota's above 500, Detroit's above 500, and Kansas City is surprisingly above 500. All 4 of those teams have made significant strides this season. Minnesota not as much so because they won the division last year, but the Detroit Tigers have drastically improved since last year. The Kansas City Royals drastically improved, and the Cleveland Guardians drastically improved. That's impressive. The AL Central is absolutely the most competitive division right now in Major League Baseball. And so I don't want to hear any more of these excuses that AL Central is terrible baseball. I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I get the White Sox are terrible baseball, but the other 4 teams have been in this thing throughout the entire season, and they deserve credit for having the abuse the AL Central has gotten over the years to finally just take the division by the palm and say, hey, we're the best division in baseball, and we have the records to show it. With that being said, go Guardians, and I'll have more reaction if they clinch the division, once they get a playoff win, if they get a playoff win, of course, and, most importantly, when they win a series, or if they lose a series. I'm going to have instant reels and reaction to that, along with every Browns game, so stay posted on Raw Take social media for more on that. All right, before we get to week 1 of the NFL season, I want to talk about the all-you-can-eat biscuit offer from head coach of Marshall, Charles Huff. Marshall head coach Charles Huff offered Ohio State players NIL incentives for biscuits. That is hilarious. Now, I don't think it's going to work, but that is absolutely hilarious. Now, I think the incentive should be if you're an Ohio State player and you're not getting playing time, you're going to get it with us. That should be the incentive, not biscuits. But I still think it's hilarious. All you can eat biscuits, why not? Ohio State and Marshall is going to be an interesting matchup because of that now, but it's the fourth bye week in a row for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think Will Howard is in really good control of this offense, and I think he's shown it so far in the first two games. Going into the bye week, they're going to be more well-rested to, I think, obliterate Marshall even more. Now, the last time they played Marshall, I believe, was one of the vacated games back in 2010. I might be wrong on that, but I believe that was the last matchup with Marshall. So, obviously, Ohio State has a historical trend of beating Marshall. Let's figure out how they can get it done this week and stay on the course to hopefully beat the teams, like I've always said and will emphasize all the way till I'm blue in the face. They have to beat Michigan, they have to beat Oregon, they have to beat Penn State. I am convinced they could beat maybe two of those three teams. I'm not sold on the Michigan game yet. Obviously, Michigan looked terrible against Texas, but still, not sold on it yet. Big pressure on Ryan Day, and big pressure on Will Howard to keep running this offense the way he's been doing it. He has another easy opportunity to do that this week against Marshall. All right, week 3 of the NFL season coming up, and obviously the New York Jets obliterating the New England Patriots. I'll be honest with you, I don't have much to say about that game at all. It's everything I expected. So let's get to some of the other games going on in week 3. We'll start off with Green Bay and Tennessee. I think if Jordan Love plays, because he's currently questionable, Green Bay will win. But I think Tennessee actually wins this game if there is no Jordan Love. I just think Malik Willis kind of had a fluky game last week. He's used to playing some of those AFC South teams because of his time in Tennessee. And this is his former team, by the way, but a new system, no more Mike Vrabel. So I think Green Bay is actually going to be in jeopardy if Malik Willis plays this upcoming Sunday. So I think they have to play Jordan Love, or I like Tennessee to win the game. So I'm going to take Green Bay with a healthy Jordan Love. If Jordan Love isn't playing on Sunday, I am taking Tennessee to win this game and keep their season alive, because starting 0-3 obviously would be a disaster for them. Nevertheless, I think they're a bad team anyway. The Browns and the Giants. So for me, I'm actually nervous about the Browns in this game. Not because I think the Giants are good. I think the Giants are a little bit better than given credit for because they scored 3 touchdowns. They still found a way to lose in New York Giants fashion against the Washington Commanders, and the Washington Commanders only scored field goals in that game, while New York only scored touchdowns. But that's kind of why I'm scared, because the offense did kind of click for the New York Giants to a degree. Now, their defense is atrocious. I don't think they're going to do anything against the Browns offense. But we saw the Browns offense ineptitude against the Dallas Cowboys, which is why I'm scared. The Browns offense looked a lot better against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Deshaun Watson kind of went back to his old self in that game. Not all the way, but there was flashes of the Deshaun Watson of old. And he's not grounding balls as much as he used to. I want to emphasize that as well. So I am actually going to take... I want to pick the Browns to win this game 20-10, and so I'm going to do that. But I'm nervous. Something about this game just makes me nervous about the Browns. I don't know why. I think the Giants' season's on the line too. Brian Daboll's feeling that pressure now from the New York Giants. So I'm going to flip it. I am going to take the Giants to win this game in an upset. Stinks for my Browns. I just don't know how they overcome the Giants really having more sense of a desperation than the Cleveland Browns right now. I just think that sense of desperation will put the Giants over the top. I'll go 13-10. The defense keeps them in it, but the Browns offense struggles. All right, Chicago to Indianapolis. I actually like a lot of what I saw from Indianapolis in their game against Houston. Not as much in the Green Bay game, but I'm still going to pick the Colts to win this game at home because I just think Chicago's that bad. They did not look good against the Houston Texans last Sunday. Nothing about Caleb Williams excites me, and I still am going with my theory that he's a bust and the Bears made a mistake. So I'm going to take Indy in this game. Houston and Minnesota. I like what I saw from the Vikings the last couple weeks, but I'm still not sold on the Vikings with Sam Darnold being their quarterback. C.J. Stroud is the real deal. I believe explicitly in what the Houston Texans are doing right now. I think the Texans overcome Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's at home. It's a tough place to play in an indoor venue. So the Texans are going to struggle a little bit. but I think this game is 17-16, 19-17. Their offense wasn't perfect last Sunday, but man, was C.J. Stroud good regardless. So I'm taking the Houston Texans over the Minnesota Vikings. I like New Orleans in the Dome in this game. I think Philadelphia struggled heavily against the Atlanta Falcons late in that game, and I think their flaws were exploited. I think Philadelphia's defense stinks. I think New Orleans has one of the best offenses in the league right now. So I like the trajectory the New Orleans Saints are on. I think Philadelphia is going to feel a little bit of a sense of desperation, so they're not 1-2, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Give me the New Orleans Saints to beat the Philadelphia Eagles at home. All right, the only undefeated team in the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers, hosting the Chargers. That Steeler defense looks nasty this year. I don't want to face them. I think they're going to shut down the Chargers to a degree. The Chargers kind of had some easier opponents. Maybe not as much as the Raiders, because the Raiders did go on to beat Baltimore. But the Chargers, to me, still are a better opponent, I think, for the Steelers than anyone they've played so far. And I think the same thing goes for the Chargers. With that being said, I like the Chargers offense better than Pittsburgh, so I'm going to take the Chargers to go win in Pittsburgh this week in the Pittsburgh Steelers home opener game. I would love that for the Browns as a Browns fan to have Pittsburgh lose their home opener like we did. But having said that, I just think the Chargers offense is much better than Pittsburgh's, but their defense is good for the Steelers. So I'm going to take the Chargers to win that game. All right, Denver at Tampa Bay. I think the Buccaneers keep their hot streak going. They're going to be 3-0. I like the trajectory they're on with Baker Mayfield right now. So I am going to take the Buccaneers at home to defeat the Denver Broncos easily. I still think Bo Nix and that offense have a long way to go under Sean Payton. It is going to be a project, a slow project. And I still think the Denver Broncos are set up to be bad for quite some time. But even with that being said, I think there's potential with Bo Nix. It's going to take a long time. Give me Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay to win this game. Carolina and the Raiders. I easily am taking the Raiders to destroy the Panthers. I know they made a quarterback switch. Probably needed to. I feel bad for Bryce Young in a sense that even though I didn't believe in him being the first overall pick, he was subjected to the ineptitude of the Carolina Panthers. And they're just on paper so bad it's not even funny. Now I still think Adam Thielen has gas in the tank as a wide receiver, but with that being said, Andy Dalton is not nearly the quarterback he once was. He is an okay backup at best. I don't even think he's one of the top tier backups. So I am going to take the Las Vegas Raiders at home to win that game easily over Carolina. Stinks though for the Panthers because they just truly are that bad. I like the Seahawks over the Dolphins. I'm rooting for the Dolphins personally, but the Seattle Seahawks are just clicking a little bit on all cylinders. They did a good job against Denver. They did a good job against the New England Patriots. I am starting to buy back into Geno Smith's stock. I really wasn't sold on it during the offseason, but I'm much more sold on it now, and I think he could take care of business against the Miami Dolphins, who will be without Tua Tagovailoa. I just don't think Skylar Thompson's that good, and I don't know if he's going to be good enough to get that offense rolling. I think the Miami Dolphins season is in jeopardy. We'll have to see how it pans out. But right now, I think Seattle at home has a huge advantage over the Miami Dolphins. It's a tough place to play up there in Seattle. The Baltimore Ravens and the Dallas Cowboys. This game is interesting to me because I think both of these teams are really, really desperate right now. Dallas Cowboys less desperate because they already beat the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore going home to play that defense, to me, is an advantage for the Ravens. So I'm going to take the Ravens to win this game. It would not surprise me if the Dallas Cowboys do bounce back, however. I just think the Baltimore Ravens offense can easily take care of the Dallas Cowboy defense. The Dallas Cowboy defense stinks. I think more so the problem with the Browns was offensive in that game. I don't think Dallas's defense did much to stop the offensive problems the Browns had. So I think the Ravens are able to exploit the defense once again. I think this game is going to be much closer than the New Orleans Saints game was, though, however, for the Dallas Cowboys. Just because they were so embarrassed, they're not going to want that to happen again. So I'm going to take the Ravens because of their offensive power that they have. I just don't like the Dallas Cowboy defense, and that's the reason why. But this game will be a lot closer than the New Orleans Saints game. Might come down to a field goal or touchdown, but give me Baltimore in this one. All right, a divisional matchup between the 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Rams got absolutely pounced by the Arizona Cardinals, but no way am I sold on the Arizona Cardinals overall. I did say I think they'd be better than people would expect because of Marvin Harrison Jr. and because Kyler Murray is an okay, top-tier-ish mediocre quarterback. I want to say top-tier mediocre quarterback is the best way to define Kyler Murray. He's mediocre enough, but if he gets the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., the Arizona Cardinals offense could be pretty electric. With that being said, though, the Rams are definitely desperate for a win. They're 0-2 and got absolutely pounced last week. And you could say it was a reasonable loss to the Detroit Lions in overtime. So I think the Rams are more desperate. They're at home. The 49ers are coming off a tough loss to the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Rams' desperation puts them over the edge over San Francisco. Detroit and Arizona. I'm actually excited about this matchup because, man, the Cardinals... That offense just looked electric. And Detroit played the Rams the week before and barely beat them. Still beat them, but in overtime with a game-winning touchdown. So I still think Detroit's good. Could they open the season 1-2? I think it's plausible. But honestly, I think film is on the Arizona Cardinals offense now. I think Detroit's defense is a lot better than it's been over the last couple years. I'm going to take the Lions to win this game because they can run and pound the football really, really well. The Rams didn't run the football very good against the Cardinals last week, which is part of why I think they lost. Detroit can run the football, and I think they can run it down the Cardinals' throats. Give me Detroit to go win in Arizona this weekend. All right, Sunday Night Football will be between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons. Kansas City once again in the primetime spotlight. Of course they are, because it's Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I did say last week I have the Chiefs going 17-0, possibly. But that's going to be very unlikely to do. They're going to have to lose at some point. So why not to the Atlanta Falcons? I'm taking the Falcons with the upset. I love everything I saw from them late in that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Pittsburgh game was kind of fluky because we know Pittsburgh's defense is really good, but their offense really wasn't. I really like what I saw from Atlanta against Philadelphia, and they were in a really hostile environment at an Eagles home game. Now, this game is in Atlanta, so the crowd will be on their side. I like that. I think Kansas City may be in a little bit of trouble because Atlanta's defense is a lot better than they have been in the past. So give me the Falcons over Kansas City in an upset. I'm calling it right now. And if Kansas City does win, I will go back to my 17-0 prediction of possibly happening with the Chiefs. But I actually like Atlanta in this game because I just don't think Kansas City ultimately will go 17-0. Think it's possible, but don't think they will. So I'm just going to go with Atlanta to upset Kansas City. And the possibility in the NFL where things can happen any given Sunday, Atlanta wins the game. So I'll take the Falcons with the upset. All right, a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. Game 1 is Jacksonville and Buffalo. I like Buffalo to win this game. I think Jacksonville's just kind of in the toilet right now. They have to figure out a way to get out of it. Now, historically, Buffalo in recent games have been terrible against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe Trevor Lawrence is undefeated against Josh Allen, if I call correctly. Having said that, though, I think the Jaguars are in a lot of trouble. They've shown no signs of being a good football team to start this year or to even finish games. I still think Trevor Lawrence is really good, but I think that all comes down to coaching. And my other bold prediction is Doug Peterson gets fired after losing to the Buffalo Bills. They cannot continue to have a season like this off the hinges with an 0-3 start. The Jaguars may have to make an immediate change. Will that happen? I don't know. But I think it's very possible if the Jaguars don't beat the Bills. In Buffalo, by the way, a hostile environment. Everything about the Buffalo Bills says they're going to be in this game, so I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cincinnati was really good against the Kansas City Chiefs. I have to take them in this game over Washington. I just think Washington is still piecing things together. There's nothing about their offense that's really wowed me yet. Everyone's been talking about Jaden Daniels being a really good quarterback this year. I think he can develop into it, but he still needs a lot more time. I'm going to take Cincinnati over Washington just because I still don't know what Washington is yet. I have much more of an idea of what Cincinnati can be, and they're in desperation mode too. They're going to need this win. The Bengals over the Washington Commanders. That's going to be it for today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. I will be back next week with more updates from reflecting on Week 3, my thoughts on Week 4, and more on the Major League Baseball playoffs as they approach. So make sure you stick around for more Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Follow me on social media, Hoty Raw Takes Instagram, Hoty Andrew Twitter, and Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty on Facebook. More updates on the show and more. And like and subscribe as always. Have a good one, everybody. I'm Andrew Hoty, and those are my Raw Takes.